Hello friends, this is Robert Morey, the most original and prolific artist in the world, trying to share with you his suppressed discoveries. I suppressed because, well, they're non-supported, going on 15 years. It was back in about 2002 that I drew and discovered my first bounded space drawing. And it's the product of mathematical musings. I ask myself the question, when you're drawing overlapping circuits and you have cells appear, if the nodes plus the cells minus 1 might equal the links. And I started coloring in the cells and counting them up over and over again, and I finally decided that yes, this is true. Nodes plus cells minus 1 equal links. I also discovered a methodology whereby any juxtaposition of circuits, they can be circles, ellipses, they can cross themselves however many times, just so long as they close space on themselves, that the resulting tessellation will be colorable in black and white in a precise way, in only one way. So I decided to call this bounded space drawing because the periphery of all these drawings always had black cells, and I decided to call it bounded from that perspective, though they could be bounded by white cells and a big black border. So this idea of mine, by the way, I sent on postcards to everybody, to Bill Gates and to all the museums and all the rich people that I could think of, all the colleges and universities, math professors, etc., thinking that they're going to see immediately this is a genius breakthrough. It's a genius breakthrough in math and in art because it's a logical system that works every time for anybody, and it's infinitely flexible. It's a marvelously wonderful thing, and it's got the psychological aspect where it's illusory. You see motion, you see depth, and you will find that I can also make certain tracings pop out from a tessellation of bounded space. So now that's just one. We're going to push it out of the way, and I'll just throw in another here. And we'll be talking, as I talk, you'll be seeing different examples. I drew 300 of these. They're on 8.5 by 11 inch cardstock, 40-pound cardstock. And I used a Sharpie fine point pen. They began as nothing but lines. There are no inked cells. It takes about 5 to 8 hours to successfully ink an 8.5 by 11 as densely cut as mine generally are. On my page on Facebook, at Robert Morey 123, you'll find examples of the uninked and the inked, and also negative and positive photos of the bounded space. Also, I introduce color, and with my photo editor, I've created a lot of three-dimensional color juxtapositions on top of the dimensionality that you find with the black and white. So it does become a colored idea at one point. Now this particular one is interesting because you'll see there is an inclusion, and this is a square, right, a cube that I've included in there. I first, with a straight edge, and made the cube, and then I put in all of the overlapping circuits, and you see the cube is there to pop. It was an ambitious idea, this particular design. Now I made 300 of these bounded space drawings over a period of about 5 years, starting in 2002 to about 2007. And as I said, I sent hundreds of postcards through the mail. And it didn't result that I was on the cover of Time magazine. I feel this belongs on the cover of Time magazine. This is world famous. And It has not been thought of before. I developed how to do this and maybe 20 different styles. It's possible to create styles within this, and one could really devote one's entire life to bounded space drawing for all the richness that it could impart and insight that it could impart to a person with the time and desire, which was almost me, but I had a lot of other irons in the fire, and I want to see this thing taken big, see? I want this on the side of a building. One of the problems is that at an enlarged scale, the edges sometimes are a little bit fuzzy, and this is simply because I'm working at 8.5 by 11 with a fine point pen. I'm sure that the means of refining these edges probably already exists in some toolbox, and these could be blown up and sharpened. I want to sharpen them as much as possible because I think that's where they will most be effective. So now, these are photocopies I'm sharing with you here. Although I have the originals here as well. Here's an example. It's in its folder, and like that. See, now, these are the originals right here. Since they're already like 10 to 15 years old, it's pretty remarkable how well inked they still are. And as I mentioned, it takes 8 to 7 hours. I mean 5 to 8 hours to ink one of these. But also, hello Anita, look at that. I'm not getting paid, but that's what I'm using here to support these. What was I saying there? So you can't make a mistake. It starts with a bunch of overlapping circuits, and by the way, you have to train yourself to close the circuits. If you want to be good at this as a graphic artist, you have to learn to draw on paper and swirl around with the pen and return to that point of origin and kill it. You've got to actually close the space without trembling. And when you learn to do that, you can do this. If you can't do that, there are other things you might do and still enjoy the phenomenon that is here, and that's just use templates. Just trace and trace and trace. Ovals and circles and squares, they can all be juxtaposed upon one another, and they will always result in a two-color map in exactly one way. If you find my page at Robert Morey 123, there's my paper that I've written on this, and it explains how all of this works. It deserves the Nobel Prize. I deserve $1 million at least to do my continued research, and it should be celebrated. This is a breakthrough. If I were Spanish, I'd be called an orgullo hispano, a pride of their culture. But no, I'm nobody, and I'm not happy about being nobody when you do something like this. And I sent these to the damn universities. I sent this particular picture here, okay, on a postcard to, who do you think? Who else? Bill Clinton. Hillary and Bill Clinton saw that picture. All of these have names too, but I've forgotten them right now. I can't bring them off the top of my head. It has something to do with splish splash. I want you to see a fish in there maybe splashing out of the water. And so I'm expecting Bill, this was back in like 2008 or 9, to say, wow, a great American breakthrough, an art genius is found, and I have the privilege of midwifing this new birth of culture in our great land. Forget it, nothing. I also wrote him a long letter, all kinds of stuff in the letter, my political dilemmas with powers that be. I had the misfortune, believe it or not, of having known a bunch of future rock and comedy and film stars from my youth before they were. And maybe I got ripped off by these characters. I really did get ripped off by these characters. It's a nightmare when I have to get down to telling the tale of how much plagiarism and exploitation that goes into the creation of Hollywood stars. It's despicable. Well, here's just another drawing. You're enjoying it, I hope. And now, una vez más, mi dibujo para ustedes. Que está? Bueno? No? See? Okay. You'll notice, there are possibilities of styles, and here is a good example of changing the whole thing, right? Reinventing the whole matter. So I overlaid a grid and drew within the grid all of these doodles. Still works, right? The imagination is unlimited here. There are so many things that are still unimagined to be done by the innovator who wants to go here. But remember, I invented this damn thing. I should be having books published. There should be posters. I should be on Time Magazine's cover. This is as big as Time Magazine's cover. It is. It's big like Bobby Fischer. My talent is like maybe Bobby Fischer. His is chess, right? Or what's the guy now? Magnus Carlsen, I think. Well, it takes a sort of genius to make a design with integrity, just like it takes a sort of genius to play championship chess. So I developed this from scratch, and it took me, there is invested in here 2,500 to 3,000 hours of work. Besides the 300 8.5 by 11s that I did, there were hundreds of smaller, non-page filling efforts that started the whole ball rolling. And when I found that filling the page was the most satisfying, that's where I went. And now you'll notice here, you've got some right angles. Right angles always pop when they're in a tessellation of curvilinear circuits, as that you see there. And okay, this is not exactly an overhead projector. What I've got is my tablet is extended out over my sofa, and as you know, there's a box of Adidas under here, and that is where the pages are being presented. Works kind of like an overhead projector. And we're keeping going here, showing examples. There are 300 of these, and I could be showing you. And I think I'm going to cut it short. I need some viewership, I got no viewers on the 14-minute video there where I said, feel free to send money to PayPal for me, right? I could use some money because, non-support is the story of my life. They didn't support anything I've done, and I've done all kinds of brilliant things. You saw the mathematical work in these other videos with the polyhedrons, also breakthroughs. This is just one more breakthrough that I poured my heart and soul into over years. And my story is pretty bizarre. How I got here from where I was. I had been drug raped back in the early 1980s, and I lost my memory for a dozen years of the event, and I lost my memory of all my friends and things that were done when I was younger for a good long time. And during this period, I realized that I was not going to be a professional anything. I was going to be a writer. That was my idea, and a cartoonist. But I decided that I'm going to have to become an artist and follow my bliss. It's already hopeless, and it has been. I'm 60 years old, and I'm a failure. I have not succeeded. I don't have patrons, and I just have thousands upon thousands of works of art. I have over 70,000 works of art that is digital, and 4,500 ink bubble abstract paintings on the same scale here in paper, the cardstock 8.5 by 11, and some are on larger architectural drawing boards. And then I have maybe 1,000 of these, and then I have 1,000 single panel cartoons, and I have 400 collages. I mean, I've been busy more so than maybe anybody. And of course, what's driving me, one of the things driving me is that I actually knew some famous people coming up, and why aren't they going to help me? We were friends, they're going to help me. And instead, I find the very ones that I could tell you about helping other crappy guys. In fact, there was a guy in Time magazine, I can't remember his name, stacking up the animals. The guy has actually been doing ideas that I divulged to some of these celebrity friends of mine back in high school, and they wind up in the body of work of some other artists that they're making famous, and it's a bunch of crap. You see, this is really famous. This isn't I love you famous, and we're rich and famous, and we can make you famous because we're rich and famous, and that's where fame comes from. No, this is ipso facto famous. This is new in the world. This has stature in the history of graphic art. So this is famous. But no, this isn't famous. You've got to go to Harvard. You've got to go to Yale. You have to be at some big school doing this stuff where they're recognizing you and they're following your career from the start. That's what they're saying to me, but that's a bunch of shit. And as I sent these things, to the professors and to the universities and magazines, they're supposed to realize right away what they're looking at. This is a breakthrough. This is what they're aiming for. This is worth 1,000 PhDs. They just do nothing but regurgitate what other PhDs have said before. This is so much more original than anything else that it's the standout in the world. And I don't have resentment against other successful artists or other artists who are successful. And I don't want to detract from them in any way. That's the rotten double whammy that comes from being rejected when you know you're right, when you know it's famous, and then you're saying, oh, well, I'm better than this guy and that. And I started to do that a moment ago. But when there is integrity and everything in an artist, I love them and I love their work, and I don't want to cast shadows. So this is something where the authorities, the responsible people, the wise judges are supposed to step in and help. The MacArthur Foundation is supposed to have helped. And I sent them dozens of these things, right? They didn't help. They haven't helped. They don't care. They're dense as logs, right? As bricks. And it's political, that they haven't helped me. And what can I say? I'm a personable enough guy. I'm not attractive, and I'm working right now on getting truly fit, and I'm healthy as a horse. I ride my bike whenever I can. I live up here on this hill. Most people can't walk up, and I ride my bike every day. These are just more examples of drawings. And so on the sides of buildings, these should be on billboards, right? And look, they're not financing me. Would you believe that, okay, I am the son of a successful attorney at law who's dead. And he was actually a sadist. And I wasn't his son. I was adopted by him. But I came from a better background, a better gene pool than his. And my original name was Clarence Morrow Vaughn IV. And my mother divorced my father when I was like 5 years old. And this attorney that handled that divorce winded up, at my mother's insistence, adopting me legally. So I changed my name from Clarence Morrow Vaughn IV to Morrow William Guthlin. Morrow William Guthlin. And in the process, I lost a couple $1 million. I didn't know. I was 11 years old, 12 years old. I didn't know I'm giving up some sort of family pride, but they didn't fight for me. The whole family didn't fight for me. And I guess I was just shuffled around. They really have messed me up in a big way. My mother then died of cancer in my senior year of high school. And I was left with this guy who's actually a sadist, this William Guthland guy. And I didn't know a thing about his family. Talk about an adoption here. My life is a worst case scenario socially, sociologically. So this guy has no family that I've ever met. There's been, he's told me he's had a brother, and I got a watch from him, but I never met him. And after he dies, instead of getting the big fortune, I find that he's got other heirs. He's got a niece. And in fact, they're nephews, and they're surprisingly, they're little people. They're little people. And I never knew they existed. So I'm 50-50 with these little people I never knew existed. And now I'm realizing that William O. Guthland was the son of two midgets. And this might account for the sound of his voice. He had a voice that was like Fred Flintstone, very endearing. It was a funny little voice. It was a funny big voice. He was 5'11", built like a fullback. And he was a manly man, and you would never imagine that his parents were little people. So he's keeping this secret from me my entire life, and then at the end of the thing, he's cutting my throat. He was alive when these bounded space drawings appeared. He saw them, you know, and he thought, oh, you know, that's remarkable. Yet with his connections and position, it wasn't enough. And these occurred after I was drug raped and recovered, and everything I've done has been latent and sort of a surprise because I didn't show signs for mathematics at all, and what I did show signs for was public speaking, and I was like the president. In the 7th grade mock election as Hubert H. Humphrey. Yeah, I was Hubert H. Humphrey. And now this one here I'm going to want to wind up with is a departure. And I said, as I have, 30 different styles may exist. And the concept of a style in the context of bounded space drawing is a subject in itself. And I think you'll see here what I mean. You see how that departs radically from what you saw before. And there are other opportunities to do it. And I don't have, like, for example, Planet Matisse is what I call it. But sometimes I completely change up the execution because the rules remain the same. And as I said, if you can't do this with your own freehand style, and these are freehand drawings. That's very important. People don't realize that when they see them right off that these are freehand executions, but they don't need to be. They can be tracings. Get a bunch of silhouettes, get a bunch of polygons, put them on here, trace them, and the resulting cells will be a 2-color map in exactly one way. It's explained in my paper on my page at Robert Morey 123. That's Facebook. And well, I've gone on for 23 minutes, so I better stop here. I've got a little tablet. I don't know how much power we've got to go. Oh, one thing more I will show you is, there you go. This is framed. I made this it was Kinko's Copies. I took one of these 8.5 by 11 bounded space drawings down there, and we made this large picture here, this blow up that is laminated, and the frame is by Ink Bubble Abstract Paintings, original paintings. So I'll be sharing about Ink Bubble Abstracts in an upcoming video. Probably use the same technique as I just pioneered for myself here. Thanks so much. Have a great day, and send me money.